Okay, so I want to rank all the anime I watched in 2024, and to be honest, it was a pretty good year of anime. There really weren't that many shows that I watched that I didn't enjoy, and obviously, I didn't watch every single show, but out of everything I watched, I thought that this was a really good year for anime. Let's maybe start with some of the shows that came out in 2023 and sort of bled into 2024. Okay, so let's start off with Undead Unluck, and let's put it in B. Undead Unluck was a good anime and was actually really refreshing. I think some of its strong points are really strong. The Negator power system and some of the world building is actually some of the best I've seen in recent years. And while I don't think everything hits its mark, I enjoyed it and will watch more in the future. Undead Unluck has some really nice moments and twists later on in the first season. It being 24 continuous episodes really helped this series, but what didn't help this series was where it was streaming. In the United States, I believe it was streaming on Hulu, and worldwide outside of Japan, it was on Disney+, which has kind of become known as a graveyard for anime. Neither Hulu or Disney are anime streaming services, and most anime fans would not buy either of these subscriptions just to watch an anime when pirating is so easy. Having a show get free promo for months on Crunchyroll goes a long way in making a series more successful internationally. And even being on just a more popular streaming service like Netflix helps a lot too. Because of this, I feel like Undead Unluck is really underrated when it comes to popularity. It feels like nobody watched it, while I feel like actual ratings in terms of score are a lot more fair. Undead Unluck is not a masterpiece, but for me, I think it's really worth a watch and has some really incredible elements like its power system and world building. I think David Production did a good job with 2D animation, while some of the 3D animation didn't look very good, but overall, it was a pretty well animated show. Okay, next up we have Frieren Beyond Journey's End, which again, starting airing in 2023 and finished its first season in 2024. I'm not gonna beat around the bush. For me, Frieren is an easy S tier anime. It's my anime of the year for sure, and in terms of it being the greatest anime of all time, it's simply too soon to say that. The series is far from over and could get better or worse, but I feel that the first season was a 10 out of 10. Madhouse absolutely killed it with the adaptation. Fantastic animation, music, and voice acting. Frieren really does not miss. You could say that the start is a bit slow, but to be honest, I disagree. Maybe the first 5 episodes take their time to set up the story, but the first season of Frieren has so many incredible moments for me, and I really love the characters so much. I'm so happy that Frieren has gotten the reception it deserves. The anime is not overrated for me. It sets an incredibly high standard. This is the series I enjoyed the most this year. It's an S tier anime, and my personal anime of the year. Spy Family Code White came out in 2023, but for most of the Western audience, we saw it in 2024 on Crunchyroll. Code White definitely isn't the best Spy Family has to offer, being an anime original movie, meaning it doesn't really contribute much to the main story of Spy Family. But as far as filler goes, I think the movie is alright. As a modern anime film, it's not doing anything crazy, but for Spy Family fans, this is just a nice bonus to the main story. As a huge Spy Family fan myself, I'd still place it in B tier. If you're not a fan of the series, it's not exactly a movie made for you, and even if you are a fan, you could be disappointed in the fact that it's just filler. Or for me, some of the things that happened in the film felt a bit out of place for Spy Family. There were a few characters and scenes that felt a bit too outlandish even for Spy Family. The animation, of course, was fantastic. Wit Studio and Cloverworks did a good job stepping up from the main series. All in all, Code White is a film that I enjoyed, but I still think it's the worst Spy Family has to offer, so it's a B tier. Now, Demon Slayer Hashira Training Arc had one of the best episodes of anime this year, but in terms of the overall quality of the arc as a whole, I gotta put it in C tier. This arc never should have been adapted as a standalone season. I think anybody who's read the manga for Demon Slayer would agree that this is a rare situation where it would have been better to trim the source material rather than elongate it. If you're a giant Demon Slayer fan, there's a good chance that you enjoyed these 8 episodes and would take any bonus Demon Slayer content. But for me, this arc should have been trimmed into a few episodes and functioned as prologue to Infinity Castle. But with how much money the first Demon Slayer movie made, it makes sense that Infinity Castle would be adapted into a movie rather than a season of anime, but it leaves us with the Hashira Training Arc not really being good enough to stand alone as a season of Demon Slayer, but also being too long to be the introduction to Infinity Castle. That leaves me putting it in C tier. Episode 8, 10 out of 10, extremely hype. But the other 7 episodes are far from the best Demon Slayer has to offer. Now, Solo Leveling is a popular anime that I've expressed I didn't enjoy. For me, A1 Pictures did a good job on the animation for the series. Beyond that, I don't really have any praise for the show. The first 12 episodes didn't really impress me,
and I have a video going over in more detail what I don't like about Solo Leveling, so I won't rant about it here. It's not the worst anime in the world, but it definitely doesn't make the grade for a show I would continue to watch, so it's going into D tier. Now, Dungeon Meshi, on the other hand, was a show I went in with low expectations that were completely turned on their head. On the outside, it seemed like a fairly generic, lighthearted fantasy show, with the gimmick being that there's a focus on cooking, as if the Food Network was mixed with a fantasy anime. But Dungeon Meshi is so much more than a gimmicky fantasy show. Its story is very engaging right from the start. You have an incredible cast of characters who don't fail to be original and completely break the mold you expect for, say, an elf who can do magic or a knight who's the leader of a party. These characters in Dungeon Meshi are completely their own people, who don't fit into any generic mold or character archetype that you would expect from a fantasy show. They're wild and zany, but the show isn't all jokes, and it has a serious premise and a compelling adventure, with lighthearted stops that involve cooking. The environment and world building of the dungeon is exceptional, and Trigger never failed to provide some of the best animation. Dungeon Meshi was one of the most fun series to air this year, and completely blew my expectations away, as it didn't take long for me to really start enjoying the show. But the show also gets better and better the more you watch, in case you're worried about the cooking gimmick getting old. Dungeon Meshi is an absolute A-tier anime for me. I'm very excited for season 2, and I'm very happy that the anime community has enjoyed the show as much as me. Apothecary Diaries is another critically acclaimed anime that aired in 2024, and I understand why. It took quite a few episodes to really start enjoying the show, but the more and more I watched, the more I enjoyed. The episodes generally kept improving upon each other, and I really like the historical setting and the mysteries and problem solving Mao Mao has to tackle. It makes for an incredibly unique anime that stands out. I don't think it's perfect, and it took a while for me to really start enjoying the show, so I'm going to put it at the top of B tier. Besides Mao Mao, I wasn't crazy about most of the characters, albeit that's not a huge problem because Mao Mao does a great job of carrying the show. I'm excited for season 2, which is airing right now, and I believe this is a series that is definitely worth a watch and isn't necessarily going to appeal to everyone, but the people who do enjoy Apothecary Diaries really enjoy the show. Kaiju Number 8 was an anime that got a lot of love, both from the anime community and from Crunchyroll. They were really pushing this show, and it paid off, as it's one of the most popular original shows that came out this year. Animation-wise, it was good, nothing revolutionary, in my opinion, and the general idea that kaiju, giant monsters, are commonplace like natural disasters, and there's a special government branch designed to deal with it, is a nice premise for an anime. Throw in a 30-year-old protagonist with a newfound motivation to follow his past ambition to be a part of the people who fight these kaiju, and you have a pretty solid setup for a show. I thought Kaiju Number 8 was good, but nothing about it blew me away yet. I'll definitely watch more and have more of an opinion when we get more of the anime, but the first 12 episodes spent a lot of the time establishing a lot of the fundamentals of the world and a lot of the characters who will be present throughout the story. Sometimes 12 episodes isn't enough to properly show off a series, and I think Kaiju Number 8 is an example of this. I'm not dying to see more, but I also don't have many negative feelings for the series. For me, Kaiju Number 8 makes it into B tier, but more towards the bottom of it. The first 12 episodes were good, not great, in my opinion, and I'll definitely need to see more to properly judge or appreciate this anime. It has a premise with potential, but it feels like we are far from the meat and potatoes of the story. Mushoku Tensei Season 2 Part 2 was a huge step up from Season 2 Part 1. I was honestly worried about where the direction of the series was going in the first half of the second season. It felt like a huge downgrade from the awesome and dramatic adventure we got in Season 1, but Season 2 Part 2 definitely got the series back on track in my mind. It was dramatic, engaging, and had some really high highs. Without getting into too many spoilers, I love Rudy's development at the end of the season. And I like that throughout the season, it's not just a linear line where he's constantly becoming a better person. He's imperfect and makes mistakes, but by the end of the season, I was really satisfied with how the events of Season 2 changed Rudy as a person, and his outlook on his family. For me, Season 2 Part 2 was a huge step up from Part 1, and I'm putting it in A tier. It was an awesome, epic adventure filled with drama and action that impressed me. I understand some people don't like Mushoku Tensei because it's an isekai, or they see Rudy as a problematic character, and that's fine, but Season 2 Part 2 was a fantastic story. Okay, so I love Konosuba. It's obviously an anime that doesn't aim to be a masterpiece, but my god is it just such a fun show. With these characters who are such goofy, terrible, and twisted people who just have incredible chemistry with one another. Season 3 in my mind is not the best Konosuba has to offer. It's another season which expands on the world, which is nice, but the focus on Iris and Darkness, who for me are not the best characters, which means the season was good, but it was also a step down from something like the Konosuba movie. So I'm putting Konosuba in B tier. It was another good fun season of the show, but nothing special, all things said and done. The final season of Urusei Yatsura's remake includes some of the best parts of the series, with some of the best standalone episodes and the longer arcs that are at the peak of the show. For me, Urusei Yatsura has a great start and a great finish. I'd put the final season of the remake at the bottom of A tier. I love Urusei Yatsura, and this is the best part of the story for me. Obviously, this series isn't for everyone, but it's really amazing to see such a classic series receive a modern adaptation for newer anime fans to appreciate. I understand the anime wasn't very popular here in the West, but Urusei Yatsura has such fun, zany characters who had such a large impact on anime in general. I thought the remake was great as a fan, and it's definitely worth a watch. If you're a fan of My Hero Academia, you may not want to hear my thoughts on Season 7, because for me, the endgame of My Hero has dragged on for so long and hasn't offered much in return for the large time investment. I thought the first half of Season 6 was great. A lot of things were happening and it seemed like the series was getting places. Of course, the second half of Season 6 was something I really didn't enjoy. I don't think we needed Deku's edgy, angsty arc, but Season 7 just hasn't felt like enough. I like Stars and Stripes as a hero. She has a really cool quirk, and her fight against Shigaraki has value, as it ties down the potential plot hole of why are no other nations doing anything about the conflict in Japan, which I appreciate. But when you're coming off half a season of content that didn't need to happen and wasn't very enjoyable, having a fight where you know the outcome is unfortunate. Not only is everything that's happened so far in the final arc of My Hero predictable, but it takes its time to do everything. We know the person who's going to beat Shigaraki is Deku, and the more this inevitable is stalled, the more it feels like wasted time. I don't think any of the side conflicts in this season were amazing. I enjoyed All Might's appearance at the end of the season. A lot of the side plots pacing felt off, and the more the endgame of My Hero drags, the show suffers in my opinion. I'm not a My Hero hater, nor am I a fanboy of the show. I've always felt like the series was okay and not great. For me, Season 7 is a C tier. Not terrible, but a few too many flaws for me. My Dear Friend Nokotan was undoubtedly a show that had a serious grip over the anime community while it was airing. Seeing these animated deers was quite simply unavoidable. This show became a bit of a meme and ironically became one of the more recognizable shows of this year. My Dear Friend Nokotan is a gag anime that doesn't aspire to be a compelling masterpiece, but as far as gag anime go, I think My Dear Friend Nokotan is great. It's a very charming, chaotic, and cute show, and it is well animated, especially how they use 3D animation. Typically, I'm not a fan of 3D animation. To me, even when it's at its best, it doesn't look as good as 2D, and when it's at its worst, it's really bad. But My Dear Friend Nokotan uses 3D animation to only animate the mini random deer in the anime, making them stick out even more, which is really smart. I'm going to put My Dear Friend Nokotan in B tier. It's a good gag anime, and while gag anime are certainly not for everyone, this was a fun show to watch, and it probably won't have a lasting impact on me, but it was entertaining enough while it lasted. It had good voice acting and a good animation for a gag anime. It's no masterpiece, but if you like these types of shows, it's worth a watch. And yep, that's right, I put the Deer Girl anime above MHA and Demon Slayer. Deal with it. What's there to say about Too Many Losing Heroines? It's a romance anime that in many ways flips the script. In the first 12 episodes, instead of seeing our main character start to plant the seed of romance, we see through his eyes 3 separate girls lose their love interests and have to deal with the coming emotions of heartbreak and disappointment, all while our protagonist befriends these 3 heartbroken heroines. Each of their stories of losing are different, but my main issue with this anime is that in these 12 episodes, we haven't really gotten anywhere other than learning about the 4 main characters, their backstory, and how they have all become acquainted with each other. Too Many Losing Heroines first season doesn't get quite far enough, but I also can't say this is an anime without potential. I'd put it in C tier for now. It's really not a bad anime, but the first 12 episodes don't stand on their own as something special, and none of the characters have broken out of their respective mold yet. You have the small shy girl, the friendly tan athletic girl, the bubbly girl who has a crazy appetite, and the main character who's presented as very forgettable and lacking a big personality. These are all character archetypes we've become accustomed to, and the first 12 episodes don't get far enough to break these molds, leaving the characters feeling unoriginal for now. Too Many Losing Heroines is not a traditional romance, but many of its elements are very generic. I'd probably watch a second season, but as things stand right now, Too Many Losing Heroines needs more episodes, and at current is a bit forgettable. The Elusive Samurai was certainly a treat in my opinion.
I don't know why, but I feel like a kid when I watch this show. Not to say that The Elusive Samurai is a children's show, but the young main characters obviously bring a childish feel to many episodes. The Elusive Samurai mixes a pretty serious plot with pretty unserious characters, and this isn't going to appeal to everyone, but I find it very charming. Villains are often cartoonish, like the foolish villains from Saturday cartoons, but they can also be very brutal and do some pretty heinous stuff that Cloverworks isn't scared to animate. Speaking of animation, that is the Elusive Samurai's strong point. Cloverworks provided us with a visual treat. Top tier 2D animation, but also some pretty terrible 3D animation that luckily is a rare occurrence in the show. For me, The Elusive Samurai is a solid show with charm that's not going to appeal to everyone, but in my mind offers something different. I'd put it in B tier. I quite enjoyed the show, but I can't say everything about it was exceptional. A solid show worth a watch in my opinion. I've spoken a little bit about the Ranma 1/2 remake, and that's pretty much been nothing but positive opinions. And that's because the Ranma 1/2 remake has been fantastic. Getting Mappa to animate the new Ranma was really good. The quality of the animation so far has been great. Ranma 1/2 is obviously a beloved classic by Rumiko Takahashi, and Rumiko's style of a long-running episodic story is something that is a bit out of date for modern anime, which makes me happy that the Ranma 1/2 remake has been received so positively by the anime community. It's a great anime, primarily about romance and martial arts, with some really eccentric characters who keep the show interesting. For me, I'd put the Ranma 1/2 remake at the bottom of A tier. A great classic that doesn't aspire to be anything other than fun. Dandadan has become the most hyped anime of 2024 by the anime community, and for good reason. The show has gone off to a great start and already has a large pre-established fanbase. The series has great animation, voice acting, and a really funky and fresh soundtrack. The adaptation is soaring right now, and while it's just a shonen, it's a shonen with likable, eccentric characters, a great mix of sci-fi and the supernatural, and while the humor can be somewhat immature and out there, I think everything comes together nicely. You could say it's a bit overrated, but these shonen shows ultimately appeal to the most people and naturally become very popular. The Dandadan anime has been great. My biggest problem with the anime is where they left off the first season. Dandadan's success was very predictable, and I feel like a show benefits so much when they get a 24 episode season to start compared to 12. If I knew where the first season would leave off, I would have happily waited to watch the series closer to season 2's release. Overall, I'd still put Dandadan in A tier. It's fresh as far as shonen series go, and I really enjoy the adaptation and characters so far. The first season left off at a more awkward cliffhanger rather than dramatic, but Dandadan certainly deserves most of its praise that it has received thus far. The third season of ReZero is only halfway done, but what a half it's been. The first 8 episodes have done an exceptional job setting up the second half of the third season, while still providing plenty of great content. The third season is far from peaking, but I'd still put it in A tier with the expectation that the second half of this season pushes it into an S tier anime. ReZero is really such a unique and exciting experience despite being an isekai, and this season in particular is benefiting from all the great and extensive world building of the series. It feels like all the big characters thus far are present for this exciting conflict. The second season of ReZero was great, but at times felt dialogue heavy, and it felt like there was so little progression at times, spending the whole season in the sanctuary, but season 3 certainly has a much quicker pace despite there being so many more characters to explore. ReZero never fails to wow me, and I expect to rate the third season higher if everything goes well. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, there were times I was worried this season that mistakes would be made, like Amelia being relegated to a helpless heroine, or a side character being forgotten, but you really have to trust the process as the writing has been phenomenal. It looks like we're set up for an incredible 8 episodes to finish this season. Anyways, there's a couple anime I want to talk about not on my tier list. Obviously, it was another great year for One Piece, with the Egghead Island arc and Fan Letter. It's just such a long-running series, I didn't feel like including it. I also didn't get around to watching the second season of Oshinoko, as I'm a manga reader and didn't quite feel like revisiting that just yet. It was a really good year for anime. I didn't finish any F-tier anime, although I did watch A Condition Called Love, which I would certainly describe as an F-tier anime, but to be fair, I didn't finish it. The show just seemed like the most mediocre romance after 5 or 6 episodes, and I couldn't be asked to finish it. But what do you guys think of my taste? What anime did I miss out on in 2024, and what was your favorite series to air this year?